Hello, I would like to welcome everybody to this amazing interview that we're about to have. I just know that there are lots of people out there who are always looking for some good insights when it comes to time management, because most of us have so much to do in just a limited amount of time. So Don Khouri is going to be our guest today, and he's going to share some just really important information today. And it's going to be for you and your family and your business, because time management, it percolates our lives in every aspect. So just welcome to everybody. Glad to have you here. And for people who are new, you're probably wondering, my name is Tara Nolan, and I'm an advisor known as the advisor that helps you achieve and retain the lifestyle you want. But with this live stream, what I'm doing is I'm taking the time to just interview people that I find fascinating and interesting. So I hope that you find these interviews interesting, because it's not just about money, but it's just about something that's going to add some value to your life. And so we're going to do a little bit of that today. So that's why you're going to get a special in on these interviews. And every time I do an interview, it's something that helps me. So I think it's going to help you guys too. So I was really pleased to meet Don. We were working together on our keynote speeches. And as we got to know each other, I found out that he's like me. He's also publishing a book, and he's got a lot of commonalities. You know, when you talk to people, you always find all these interesting connector points. Mm-hmm. And so I was just really pleased. So let me go ahead and introduce Don, and then we're going to get into this. So Don is publishing a book that's called When to Say Yes, the 5 Steps to Protect Your Time. Okay, so who's not excited about that? Protecting time is like, as you get older, time becomes like your most precious commodity. Money's good, but time is better. So Don is a PhD in human and organizational systems. So smart guy. His background has been in software development, where he has led global teams, building high performance cultures, helping them communicate effectively across time zones and cultures to deliver software on time and on budget. Right now, Don is writing a book for people who struggle with too much to do and not enough time. It's going to be released in 2021, and the title is When to Say Yes, the 5 Steps to Protect Your Time. So Don has extensive experience as a communicator, a team builder, and a writer. So welcome, Don.
Well, thanks, Tara, and thanks for that intro. This is like bringing together 2 of my favorite topics, wealth and productivity. And actually, I think one really leads to the other if you think about it. Time management is an interesting concept because we can't really manage time. It's happening anyway, whether we manage it or not, but we can manage ourselves. So that's kind of the approach I like to take, is what can we do to better manage ourselves to be more productive, and, as I like to say, turn busy into purposely productive.
So okay, I love that. First of all, Don, you cannot manage time. You can only manage yourself. So okay, that's going to be helpful, because you're going to get into some things for that, and not just being busy. I love that. When I switched from being full-time in the military to having a business, it was one of those eye-opening moments to go, I could be busy all day long in my business, but I'm not getting paid. Because when you work for a large company or for the government, you get paid every day just because you show up. And so it's a big transition when you actually are working with that. But before we jump into this, I just wanted to remind everybody that's listening is that you can go ahead and share this with your friends, and it's going to be posted so you can listen to it again later if you don't get it, because Don's about to get into some really interesting information here. So Don, it takes me to my next question I want to ask you is,
Sure.
After reading your background, you have this like full life spectrum of, you've got a PhD in communication and dealing with people and organizational systems, and then you talk with techies and engineers. So just talk to me about that, because in the military, one of the big jobs I had to do was to take the A6 community, which was our communications guys, our computer guys, and make them talk with the logistics guys. And it was like we were on 2 different planets. So Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's fascinating.
Well, yeah. I mean, in my research, I interviewed really C-level executives, right? And mostly technology executives, to understand how they evaluated requests for their time. And I learned some very interesting things in that process. But in terms of communicating with techies, well, first of all, I am a techie. So
Okay.
that makes it easy. Early in my
Self-confessed.
career, what's that?
You're a self-confessed.
Self-confessed. Yeah, I'm a geek. Actually, in my book, I say I'm a geek about this stuff, meaning personal productivity. So you don't have to be. You can
Right.
just get the summary from me.
Nice.
But I grew up early in my career as a software developer, programming on old digital equipment corporation machines. That company doesn't even exist anymore. But what I learned, and it's fairly self-evident once I say it, is everyone communicates differently. Whether you're a techie or not, everyone communicates differently. And I see it's the responsibility of the person sending the message to make sure it's received appropriately by the other person or by the group of people. So the more we can get to know the communication style of the other person that we're communicating with, the more effective we're going to be. So for example, some people may want a lot of detail in their communication.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe techies like that. They're going to want to know the details in more direction and more information. And others may just really want big picture. And if you're giving details to someone that wants a big picture, then, that's just a simple example of where you may be crossing paths and, whatever.
Right. No, that's so spot on. And it's funny because, in the Air Force Reserve, I work as a commander. And it's one of the big things I have to teach my young folks is sending an email does not constitute communication.
Mm.
You have not flicked that booger. You have to make sure that the person got it, that they understood it, and figure out how you're going to close that communication loop.
Yeah.
So
actually, an interesting thing about email, because it reminds me of one of the CIOs that I spoke with that said, if you can't explain yourself in email in 2 or 3 sentences, something's not right. And either it needs to be a face-to-face meeting, or you're just not good enough in your communication skills in email to get the message across. So in other words, be crisp and clear.
I love that. And, we in the military, we call that a bluff, the bottom line up front. That's perfect.
Love it.
And so I love that. So here's my next question. And I think this is going to give us a little more insight. I know this about you because I've gotten to talk with you, but I love your title. You wrote it, When to Say Yes, versus a lot of books would have had something more to the effect of How to Say No. So just share with us a little bit, like, how did you do that? Was that on purpose, or you just hit on that positive slant accidentally? How'd you come up with that?
Oh yeah, it was completely accidental. Someone else figured it out. And no. Probably everything I do is purposeful at some level or another. But it's actually a great question, because early in some of my early keynote speeches, I would say that something like, there are many productivity experts out there that talk about the importance of saying no. And there are many other productivity experts that teach us how to say no. But no one really teaches us when to say no. And this is actually partly inspired by a book by Dan Pink called When, W-H-E-N. And he talks about a whole spectrum of when is the right time to do certain things. So I thought, well, we really need a time to figure out when to say yes, right? Because it's not about saying no in the end. And what I learned in my research is that people don't like to say no. Do you like to say no?
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, one leader actually said to me, no just upsets people. Why would I want to say no? Or I'd rather figure out how to do something on my own than say no. And so why teach people when to say no when they don't want to? We can just really, if we can all have a system, and it's really a decision-making system of when to say yes, then no takes care of itself.
And I think that really resonated with me, that point, because, we talk about that. I had this great boss a few years ago, again, in my Air Force career, who just said, we don't want to say no because we want to say yes if. Because you can't say yes to everything, but you want to figure out, how do we get to yes? Because we're in the business of taking care of each other and providing customer service. For those listening that have businesses, you're in business to help people. So you don't want to just tell people no. But obviously you can't do every single little thing. So it's trying to figure out, how do we get to yes? What circumstances are going to make it a win that we can work together and make that happen. Yeah. So I love that. So to just talk to me a little bit about this, and I guess maybe I'm going to ask you two questions at once, probably. Okay. So if you can just touch on, you're a productivity expert. And I think a lot of folks out there are very type A and they're good at being busy. So talk to just that distinguishing between being productive and being busy.
Yeah. So it's funny because, first of all, I wrote that down. I love that. Say yes if instead of no because. That's a great mindset shift, because you can really do anything with the right time and resources and priority.
Right.
Because that's actually another thing I love to say, which is it's never about time. When people say, I don't have time for that. Well, our priorities, we will make time for our priorities. So it may not be a priority. I don't have time means it's not a priority. That's my interpretation of that. But now I moved away from your question. Tell me your question again.
Well, just to touch on that, I think I've heard it phrased sometimes, that we're here to be human beings, not human doings. And how do you get out of that space of just being busy, but maybe not necessarily productive?
Right.
How do you talk about that?
And busy sometimes, I mean, it's in some ways it's a default, right? When you ask, how are you? I'm busy. I'm crazy busy. I'm scary busy. People are just busy, or they even use busy as a badge of honor. I'm really busy, right? So, but what we really want to do, busy doesn't necessarily mean productive. So as I said earlier, transform busy into purposely productive. So instead of working on things that aren't moving you closer to your goal, you're being purposeful about working on your goal. You're really clear and crisp on your priorities. That's what purposely productive is. You're making progress on your most important goals. You're scheduling time for your most important goals. You're moving towards the things that you really want in your life. You're making change in your world, right? Sometimes we want to change the world like Jeff Bezos did, or Elon Musk did and is doing, or we want to change our world, our company, our community, our family. So let's make progress on that by being purposely productive. Does that answer your question?
It really does. And you're making me have just a moment of self-reflection here, because I'm just thinking back to when I've said that, I don't have time, and not meaning it, but maybe conveying to somebody that I didn't feel like they were a priority. So I'm glad that you've made that a point, because that would be something I'd want to be very intentional about, and not tell somebody, well, I don't have time for that. And not meaning like you're not a priority. So you've shifted how I'm going to think about that. And I really appreciate that. So can you talk next about, so you were in this productivity business, and I know you've done some keynote speaking. What made you decide to write a book?
Well, I really wanted to help people get to this point where they're feeling in control of their time and they're getting their time back, because I'm just hearing this so much. So it's actually part of why I went back to school to get a PhD, because I wanted to understand this at a scientific level of what really makes people tick when they're evaluating requests for their time. That's the question. How do you evaluate requests for your time? Every request we get in one way or another, a small little email, a text message. Someone asked me to actually take on a new big project today, which I need to think about and apply my steps to deciding how to do that. And all of that is to ultimately protect our time and focus on what we really want to do.
So I love that you said that, because that's one of the big things with my finance business is talking with people, working with a financial advisor. It's not about a question of, are you smart enough, or could you do it yourself? It comes down to, it's really a question of time. And a lot of it is what do you want to spend your time doing? If you're a doctor, a lawyer, you're a teacher, whatever your profession is, do you want to take what little free time that you have and then all of a sudden figure out how to be a financial planner? Now, some people do, but for a lot of folks, it really is this question of time. And I love it. It's prioritization, because we only have 24 hours in the day. Mm-hmm. So what do you?
We all have the same amount of time.
And it's not a right or wrong. It's a very personal decision of what your priority is. So I love that. So for the listening audience today, Don, can you share with us like a good teaching point or some aha from your book? I don't want to give the whole book away, but could you just share with us to give us a flavor?
Well, I'm glad you brought up wealth management, because I'll use a little metaphor here with managing your wealth, with managing your time. In fact, what if we shifted our thinking from managing time or spending time to investing? Because isn't our time really an investment, just like our money is? So if you had, let's say you were investing a portfolio of $100,000 and you had that invested in some mix of equities and mutual funds and maybe some bonds to balance it all out, and you have a nice diversified portfolio. And then you find out, well, things are shifting. Maybe something like, a pandemic hits us and we need to rethink how we're investing. Or maybe there's something new that we want to invest in. And we're working with $100,000. So if we're going to invest in something new, what do we need to do? We need to divest something else. We need to sell something else to make room. Maybe I want to invest in cryptocurrency now, which I'm not advocating. I'm not discouraging or advocating. That's your decision with your financial advisor. And if you did want to, then maybe you got to sell something to be able to take on something new. I'm going to guess the listeners out there, I may be going out on a branch here to make this guess. Would you say that your listeners really have full plates already right now?
I would say absolutely.
Yeah. So it's the same thing applies, is if a new request comes in, something else needs to be deprioritized in order for you to fit that. When I led global software development teams, the most effective leaders that worked for me, when I brought them a new project to take on, they would say in a very collaborative way, I'm happy to do that, Don. Where will that fit in my priority list? Because they're already full, right? And great. So then we would work together to figure out, what, it really doesn't beat any of those. We need to say no to that. Or it really does. We need to make this number 2 on your list because it's late breaking and things need to shift. So these effective C-level executives, the most productive people, they're really good at that reprioritizing consciousness.
Yeah, you're blowing my mind right here, because I'm just thinking through the day. So I just took last week this power breathing meditation workshop, and it was wonderful, and I felt so much better. But it takes about half an hour, and every morning I try to do a little cardio workout, which takes about a half an hour, and I think I could fill up like my whole morning just with like that kind of stuff. And so it really does become this challenge to figure out like what is your priority going to be, and how are you going to work through all that. So,
well, here's the good news, Tara, is there are actually studies which show mindfulness meditation drives your productivity.
I have heard that. And so I can tell you what, I was a little suspect with the power breathing meditation, and I slept better. So it was like, I became a believer because I was like, it just works.
Good for you.
I love that. So now, take just a minute and tell us, who is your book for? Like, from everybody listening today. So we know that we all need to get better at our time management and managing ourselves and figuring that out. Who do you think would really benefit the most from your book?
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because I started with a fairly narrow audience, which was I wanted to help out C-level executives with this to benefit from the interviews and what I learned in interviewing C-level executives around the country. And then I thought, well, why not executives? Well, why does it have to be C-level executives? I think any executive could benefit from this, or any leader could benefit from this. And then as we got further along in the book process, the publisher really asked, Don, isn't this really applicable to anyone that feels like they have too much to do and not enough time? So I know that's a fairly small market, right? Who has too much to do and not enough time? but I think the concepts can apply to anyone in that space. And so the examples in the book turn out to be more generic. There are some, software examples and exec, but for the most part, they're generic examples that can apply to anyone.
So I have a question, and this may not be a fair question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So we have people listening to the call that go, I'm so busy and I have so much to do. How do they justify taking the time out to read a book like this that will probably help them? But when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I have so much on my plate, how do I carve out time to do something that may help me? How do they wrestle with that?
Well, I love reading, first of all. Most of the books I consume actually are on Audible right now. I'd say about 80% I listen versus read. And I get through 2 or 3 books a month. And the way I do that is I listen while I'm walking, exercising, getting ready in the morning. And so, and for me, it just helps me get better. So that's maybe one concept, is find a way to listen, not just to my book, but if you're going to read my productivity book, you're probably going to read other productivity books as well. And I would encourage you to do that. And at the same time, invest in yourself first. Because when you invest in yourself, you're going to serve the people that you serve in a better way. And so whatever that means, maybe that's a seminar or a retreat or reading, journaling. There's lots of ways to invest in yourself. Meditating, exercising, like you just talked about. Invest in yourself. Say yes to yourself first, and then you'll be able to serve others. Just like they say on the airplane, right? Put your mask on first, and then help others.
Right. So, man, this time is just flying. Before we finish up and I do a recap, is there any one last bonus concept that you might share with us?
This is, I can't believe we're on the last concept already. Wow, this really is time does fly. It's the book I'm reading right now, by the way, is Why Time Flies. It's kind of a scientific approach to time. It's kind of interesting. But the last idea I would bring is about mindset. So bring some awareness to the way you evaluate requests for your time. Just maybe thinking about that in itself will help you move down the path of when is the right time to say yes and when is the right time to say no. Is be aware of how you're evaluating requests for your time. And then when the book comes out, you can get into like the entire process and the 5 steps to protect your time and how all that works.
Gosh, I just love it. So, man, time has just flown. So what I do want to do right now is just do a really quick recap for the people that are just tuning in or having a little bit of time. You're going to have to read Don's book to get the full picture because there's so much. I mean, we've just scratched the surface. So if you're taking notes, go ahead and write these down. So these were my big takeaways just from today. Was this idea is that we don't really get to manage time. We get to manage ourselves. Because we always talk about time management and I always approach it from like looking at my calendar at the clock and how I'm going to manage it. But I really am managing myself. So I think that was a really huge point. And then I really liked how Don talked about it's all about prioritization because you just have a certain amount of time in that day. And so it really kind of starts with getting very clear on what your priorities are. So sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's because you're trying to serve everybody instead of getting very clear on what your priorities need to be for yourself. So that was something that really resonated with me. And then I really liked it. I don't think this was a main point, Don, but I think it's a huge takeaway is, so how do you work something in like this and invest in yourself? And like just the idea of like Audible books. So you can do it while you're walking, while you're driving. So you're not adding like a separate section out of your day. You're combining an activity with something you're already doing. So you get that win-win. And so for me, I'm going to make a note to like really start to incorporate that into my drives and doing that. So, I love that. And then, just this bonus concept of figuring out like, how do you evaluate the time that you have? Because it's so independent for each of us. And it's good to read and see what other people do. But at the end of the day, it's what is your priority, and where are you with your family and with your careers? There's so many things that impact that. So amazing concept. So I'm really excited to hear about the success people are going to have because I just can't wait until your book comes out, Don, to read it. So Don, will you share with us, how do people do a pre-order for your book or how can they connect with you? Because I know you also do keynote speaking and you're available as a resource in that way. So how do you want people to reach out to you?
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to add one more takeaway,
Okay,
which I
please.
got from you. So I love that too, which is think yes if instead of no because.
Right.
That's a great mindset shift too. So the pre-order, the book is going to be ready for pre-order. We expect in mid-August. It's going to be released in mid-September. So between now and then, you can get on my email list by going to whentosayyes.com, whentosayyes.com, and just enter your name and email address. That's all it asks for. And in fact, the next email you're going to see, we just finalized the cover, and I'm going to announce what the cover looks like. So that's going to be exciting. And you can also, once you get there, you can browse around the site and you can see how to book me as a speaker or as a coach.
And just talk about that briefly too, Don. So like, what kind of speaking do you do? Like who do you normally speak for?
Yeah. So combination of things is one way is I speak when I train clients. So I train them on things like we talked about, like communication and the system of when to say yes. But also companies will bring me in to speak to their senior teams and usually deliver us could be anywhere from a 30-minute to 60-minute keynote on productivity to really set the tone for maybe a 2-day offsite or a 3-day meeting with the leaders of the organization. So that's another great way. And I love doing that. I love being on the stage and sharing with teams and interacting with them and getting them excited about this.
And so you just made me think of another thing, Don. So as part of your book, are you packaging your book in a way that it would be great for like bulk orders for when people bring you in to speak, so that you can just make sure everybody has a copy of the book and can really refer to that?
Absolutely. It's going to be really easy to do that. Really easy to bulk order and ship right to the location and have it all ready. And then we can even sign them for the people, for the attendees. So yes.
So I'm very excited for you, Don. So I'm really looking forward to this book.
Thank you. You look as excited as I do about this, Tara. Thank you.
Well, it's exciting because I'm in the process along there with you. So, I get to live vicariously. And so it's my book is about wealth as a team sport, and it is a team, and it's not just a team in any one area, in your life, whatever you're doing, there's all those connector points because you never get anywhere alone. And
that's so true. We can get much further. I love a quote from Zig Ziglar, a great motivational speaker. He says, you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want, which is a great message around, working as a team and helping others. And then they'll help you too.
It's wonderful. I love it. So we're at time, everybody. So don't forget that you can share this interview with your friends, because there's a lot of people who can really benefit from this idea of how do we manage ourselves and set our priorities and deal with this limited 24 hours in a day that we have. So I'm really looking forward to hear anybody's thoughts and feedback on this. And also you can just email me if you have a request for a topic, because if you know an interesting person that we should be interviewing, let me know, because just like Don has been an amazing guest, it's all about adding value and bringing value for each other. So I can't wait to hear about your all's success. I will talk with you later. Bye.
Thanks, Tim.